Hi everybody, welcome to Module 4. We're on page 79 and we're going to start working through this chapter. So just like all the other modules, if you have the book, follow along, otherwise you can watch the videos, and let's get going. So in this module we're going to talk about the case for an upcoming annual meeting. Yolanda Lee wants to discuss spending patterns at Reason to Go, the company that we've been working on. She asks you to create a chart showing trends in company expenses over the past 4 quarters. All right, so now this is really important. Before we get going, take a look at page 80 and look at some of the guidelines for planning a chart. This is really important because even though charts show us our data, they can at times be incredibly confusing. So just because the chart is there doesn't mean that it's going to accurately show the information. In fact, if you design a chart wrong, it could tell people the wrong thing when they look at that picture, right? But that's not going to happen to us. We're going to do some great chart ideas, and it's important to understand the elements of a chart. So take a look at figure 4.2, which is in the middle of the page on page 81, as well as the box at the bottom of page 80, which explains what each piece is, and we'll look at that as we go through the chapter. So let's get going. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is open up our file. In this case, it's file 4-1. So I'm going to open that up in Excel. Okay, so what it's going to ask us to do is step number 1 is press File, Save As, and I'll just save this on the desktop for now, but you should put it wherever your files are supposed to go. And it's going to ask us to save it as ex4-r2g for Reason to Go. And make sure it says Excel Workbook, and I'm going to press Save. All right, so it saves our data. Now, first, before we do anything else, let's take a look at what this is, right? So it says Reason to Go, fiscal year 2017, quarterly tour expenses. Now it's going to tell us the country on this side, the totals along the bottom, and for each quarter, this is how much expenses we had. And this is the total of Australia. The total was 26,000. The total for everything together was 153,000. We could also look at the total for all countries by quarter, and that would mean that quarter number 1 is 35,000. So it depends how they're organized. Okay, so now let's go to step number 2. We're on page 82. I'm going to go from cell A4 all the way over to E12. So I'm going to grab all these cells up here. Then you'll notice at the bottom right-hand corner, this box comes up, Quick Analysis, or you can press Control Q. So I'm going to hit Quick Analysis, and then I'm going to go to where it says Charts. Now you'll notice that 4 charts come up, and we can preview it by just putting the mouse on top of where it said Cluster Column. Now, this particular one is Cluster Column, and what's going to show us is, it's going to show us each country, so we have Australia, Brazil, Britain, etc. Along the bottom, which is the x-axis, it says quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4, and those are the different colors that we see. And we also have the amount of money, so the scale on the y-axis on the left-hand side is how much each one of those things are. So let's take a look at Malaysia for a second. In quarter 1, which is the blue line, we have like around a little over 3,000, right? And then if you look at the green line in quarter 3, it's way above 8,000, right? So that tells us by country which they are. And it depends which one we looked at. Now, each one is going to tell us a slightly different thing. So this one is going to tell us how much money each country made overall. And if you look carefully at the numbers on the y-axis, you'll notice that they're now 5, 10, 15, 20,000. They're much bigger, right? The colored segments are the quarters, and they stack up on top of each other. So all of Australia is now in one line. Instead of here, we actually had Australia divided into 4 lines, which is why the legend has a much lower number. Okay, so but for our purposes, we're going to click this one, Clustered Column, and here's our chart. Right, so this is going to show us by quarter, these are the quarters over here, our things. Now what we're going to do is we're going to click on the Switch Row Column button. So I'm going to click on Design up here. I'm going to hit this button that says Switch Column Row. Okay, now what does it show us? It shows us the opposite of what we were looking at before. So now it shows by country, by quarter, the other way. So I'm going to switch it again, and here we'll have country and quarter. Switch it again, and here we have quarter and country. So if we want to know how we did in quarter 1, we could look at all the quarter 1s together And it turns out that the yellow, which is India, did not do as well as the red, which is the US, right? We could see that if that's what we're looking for. If we want to show how each country did, now, even though here we could, for example, look at quarter one by picking out all the blues from each one, it makes it a lot more difficult to see what are the big ones and what are the small ones. Even though we could see that India is smaller, USA is bigger, we have to look at a lot of different pieces. Essentially what we do when we switch it is we put all those pieces next to each other, right? So these are all the quarter ones together. All right, so now we're back at our original design, which looks like this. And let's go back to step 6. So it says click the chart title placeholder, so that's going to be over here, right? And we need to put a title in. And let's type in R2G. Quarterly tour expenses. There we go. Okay, and then when we put that title in, it saves it at the top of our chart. The nice thing is we could then take this chart and copy it and paste it into Word or somewhere else where we want to use our report. Now again, it's always important to remember that when you click on the chart, it's going to show you what the different categories that it's using are and what data it's pulling from. So if you're not sure if you grabbed the right thing or if the chart shows the right information, you could easily find out just by clicking on the chart. Okay? So now we also have something called sizing handle. So you'll notice that when you click on the chart, these dots appear in the corners, and we could take those and we could like stretch them out, or we can move the chart around depending on how we're trying to, oh, there we can't see anything. There we go. Depending on what our application is, where we want to send it, it could make the chart smaller or larger. It just depends, right? And that brings us to the end of step 6. Okay, so I'm going to press save, and then we'll continue from there. Okay, so now we'll take a second, and we're just going to look at a different kind of chart called a sparkline. Now you'll notice that we looked at all this data, and it created this big chart. It takes up a lot of space on the page. But sometimes we have a lot of numbers, and we don't have room to put some big charts like these. And instead, we want a teeny tiny chart. And basically, we just want to know between these 4 numbers, is the trend going up or down, right? Like, how does it go? Just a little indication. So we could do something called a sparkline. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to where it says Insert, and we're going to click on Line. And under sparklines, we have 3 kinds: line, column, and win-loss. And we'll take a look at all 3. So first, we're going to do line. This box pops up, and it says, where's the data that you want? So I'm going to go and grab our 4 without grabbing the total, because that would be too big a number since it's all the other numbers added together. But in our case, we're going to do B5 to E5, and I'll hit enter. And it's going to say, where do you want to put it? And we already put in G5, the spot where it's supposed to go. So I press OK, and it's going to show us quarter 1 started low. We ended up peaking in quarter 3. Now the cool thing is we could grab this and just drag it down like that. And it's going to do the same thing for all of these cells inside of here with these little charts. So we can basically really quickly see the trend instead of having to make a big chart. So if I look at this guy, for example, which is Germany, Germany started off really strong and then sort of like fell and leveled out, right? Whereas India started really low this year and then went up. So it doesn't show you in relation to each other, but each shape will show you what's going on. Now sparklines are a little hard to erase. So in order to get rid of them, we have to select them all, right click, then go to sparklines and click where it says clear selected sparklines. That will get rid of them. Now I'll show you another sparkline that we can do. We can go to insert and we'll do column. Column's the same idea, so I'm going to grab my 4 numbers and we'll press OK. And this time it will tell you how big each number is in comparison to each other. So again, let's take a look at Malaysia. So it starts off low, low, big number, small number. It doesn't tell you how big they are, but it gives you an idea of how big the numbers are in comparison to each other. Okay, now win-loss isn't really relevant for us because we don't have negative numbers, so they're all going to be wins. But if you have a series that some are negative and some are positive, it will make some of them bigger numbers and other ones smaller numbers, right? So I'll show you what that looks like. You just click on where it says win-loss, and we're going to grab our first set of data. Oh, sorry. I have to just grab the first one. There we go. So I'll go insert win-loss, and I'll grab our first 4 numbers, press OK, and drag it down. Now you'll notice that everything is blue because all of our numbers are positive. But let's say we had a number like minus 5,000, then you notice that it would be like blue up top here and 1 red, which means that's a negative number. Right? You can see that the number went down here below. But besides that, win-loss, if you have all positive numbers, isn't really that helpful. Okay, so I hope that gives you an idea of how to do sparklines, which can be really helpful if you want to save space. If you want to read about it, that's at the bottom of page 83. Okay, so next we're going to talk about moving and resizing a chart, which is really simple. I'll click on the chart so it's selected like this, and we're going to go to the upper left edge of the chart, like this. So I'm not right on the corner, I'm like just below it, and then I could click and move the chart around, right? So it says move it to cell A16, so let's just drop it over there. Okay, it's right in the corner. Now we can go like this, click on the chart, and drag it out to column G, right? So we could resize the chart. In this case, it makes it a lot bigger. Now you'll notice when it's smaller, it makes the text like on the side like that so it could fit in better. When it's bigger, like this, then it puts them all straight. So it just tries to fit it optimally into the best way that it can go. We could also click on one of these guys at the bottom or the top and resize them depending on the size that we need, right? Now, let's click on the quick layout button. So let's go into design, and here we have where it says quick layout, and you'll notice that each one of these is a different kind of layout for our chart, right? So it's the same data, but it's going to give us a whole bunch of different ways to lay it out, right? A whole bunch of different possibilities. Okay, so let's follow the examples in step 6. Basically, I have my chart selected, and I'm going to go to where it says Design, and then I'm going to click the Quick Layout, and we'll grab this one. Now, you'll notice the difference between this is that normally our legend is across the bottom, our title's at the top, our legend's at the bottom, but this time we're going to put our legend on the right, right? So now it says quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, and that actually gives us more room over here to see the numbers better. And then I'm going to go right above it, and I'm just going to click on the legend box and move it up. So we're able to move this around depending on how you want to design it, where you want to put it, and you can customize the chart like that. Okay, next let's click on cell A12, which is USA, and we're going to type in, instead of USA, United States. Okay, you'll notice as soon as we type in United States, I'm going to resize this a little bit just so it fits. You'll notice that down here on the chart it changed to United States as well, right? We can also click on column A and go back home, and we're going to click on Format and Auto Fit Column Width like this. So we'll fit it the right way. So before we had it like this, right? So it was cut off. And then I'm just going to click on the A, Home, Format, Auto Fit Column Width, and there we go, right? So it just depends what you put into there, right? Now we can also move the chart, so we're just going to do that box, the yellow box at the bottom of page 85. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the chart, and then I'm going to go to where it says Design, and click on where it says Move Chart. And it gives us two options. Either I could put the chart onto a new sheet in this workbook, or I can make an object in sheet 1, which is this page, right? So I'm going to press New Sheet, I'm going to press OK. It's going to think for a second, and this is going to give me a chart sheet, so the only thing on this entire sheet is just the chart, right? Then we can go back to our sheet over here. So that just depends on how you want to set it up, and if you want to make a chart like this. And keep in mind that you could also copy this chart, the chart that we had, into Word or Excel or somewhere else just by copy and paste.